Father accused me of being selfish for turning my guest room into a nursery for my baby. Am I the a-hole and it's by user guest room debacle? Am I a hole for sacrificing the guest room instead of the office space? My husband and I live in a 3-bedroom apartment. We sleep in the master bedroom, and until earlier this year, the other 2 were a guest room and an office space we both shared. Our first child was born in October and we decided to turn the guest room into his nursery. We thought about sacrificing the office instead but decided we needed it more than the guest room. I work on site, but I also do some freelancing from home, and my husband works hybrid. We don't need to do our work from the office, but it's more comfortable and less chaotic, especially now that we have a baby. On the other hand, we rarely have guests over. If we do, the office is big enough to set a mattress, a normal one, not an air mattress, on the floor. My father lives in a different country. He's traveling here for Christmas in about a week, and this will be his first time meeting my son in person. Last time he came, I was pregnant and we still had the guest room, so he stayed there during his visit. A couple of weeks ago, my father called to ask whether he could stay at my apartment again this year. I said, sure, but we don't have the guest room anymore, so he'd have to sleep in the office. He asked what I meant and I told him we'd turned the guest room into the baby's nursery. He then asked why I hadn't gotten rid of the office space. I explained my and my husband's reasoning. My father got annoyed and said, whatever, I'll get a hotel, before hanging up on me. The next day, my father texted me. He said it was selfish and inconsiderate of me and my husband to keep an office we don't actually need over a room to properly house potential guests. He added that he didn't raise me to be such an awful hostess and it's insane of me to think people would be okay sleeping on a mattress on the floor. My sister is siding with my father and I'm starting to doubt myself here. Am I the a-hole? No, OP. You're not the a-hole. It is your apartment. You guys get to do whatever you want. You wanted a nursery and you had 2 rooms optional. You use your office sometimes and the guest room rarely because you rarely have potential guests, as your dad puts it. So in my opinion, you guys made the logical choice. Now if your dad doesn't like it, well, tough luck for him. He's not entitled to a room in your house just for him for whenever he visits. And your sister's opinion in the matter is irrelevant. Did she help you pay for your apartment? Is she paying your rent or something like that? No. Why doesn't she host your dad? Maybe she was raised to be a better hostess. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's check out the community comments. Blydump Bob says, not the a-hole. A guest room is nice to have, but you have reason enough to use that space otherwise. In fact, to not do so could be a waste of space. Surely your dad also taught you not to waste resources? As for your sister, does she live nearby to you? Maybe she's afraid that we'll hit her up, or does she live far away and was figuring on using your guest room for some free lodging of her own? And OP responds, my sister is younger and still lives with our mother, 15 minutes away. She only stayed in my guest room once before and has said she's perfectly fine sleeping in the office if she ever has to. Lukua CDN says, honestly, I sometimes think it's so wasteful to keep a full room just on the premise that someone might come over to stay. I'm all for hybrid rooms, office with a built-in Murphy bed on the wall, project room with a pull-out couch, exercise home with gym and an air mattress. Like, why take your limited space and have it dedicated solely to something that might not be used for months on end? Not the by any means. Kelly the Blaze says, not the a-home should be set up for the best interests of the people who live there. You and your husband both regularly work from home. Sure, you could make do without the office, but it would be awkward and inconvenient for you both. It's quite absurd for someone who isn't paying any part of the rent or living there to expect you to suffer routine inconvenience in your own home year-round to better be convenient for them a few days of a year. And Kimbo151 says, not the a-hole. Work from home wasn't a thing when your father was in the workforce. Nowadays, a home office is a must, and it sounds like you and your husband both use it. While it is great to have a dedicated guest room, it's also crazy to have a room in your house that is almost never used just in case someone comes to visit you. If the space permits, I'd consider getting a nice comfortable pull-out sleeper sofa for your office, but a plan to have guests stay at a nearby hotel is perfectly fine. Additional information from Ops comments. Fitting a mattress on the floor still requires moving stuff around, which we have to put back in place later. We barely get visitors, so buying a bed frame wouldn't be worth it. And to be honest, I never loved having guests over for long periods. Having frequent visitors would be exhausting, especially now that I have a baby. Now if my father were a regular visitor, it would definitely be worth it. He only comes here once a year, which is not frequent enough for that. He visited an extra time earlier this year for a wedding and stays for a little over a week. We never made any agreement that he could stay with me every time, but I have housed him before. The office isn't unreasonably small, but it's not huge either. Again, it's a regular mattress, not an air one. My husband and I use the office at least 4 times a week. We don't plan on getting rid of it unless we have another child. My father is 60 and has never expressed any interest in moving back to my country, nor would I allow him to move into my apartment if he did. My apartment is medium-sized at best. We don't get a lot of overnight visitors. Alright. So the community agrees that OP is definitely not the and now let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. Hey, everyone, my father flew home on Thursday, so I feel pretty good about writing an update now. First of all, I have read most of your suggestions for rearranging my home to make it more suitable for guests. Murphy beds, futons, sleeper sofas, having a guest room with a desk instead of an office, etc. And while I appreciate your advice, most of them would not work. We don't have the space for a pull-out couch, can't budget for a Murphy bed, and need more than just a single desk as an office. That said, my husband and I are looking into getting a small futon. Secondly, my father did end up staying at a hotel, but not without reluctance. I didn't really express this in my original post, but I feel like my father's annoyance about this had more to do with his expectations of me as a person than of my home. He always expected me to prioritize others even when it was uncomfortable or inconvenient for me. I shared a room with my sister for 6 years so he could have a guest bedroom he barely used. I didn't get my own bedroom until we moved to a different place when I was 17. And even then, he wanted us to share again. I love my father, but I'm glad we don't live together anymore. And to be honest, I never actually liked having guests over, especially for long periods of time. My father always loved hosting other people, but I always found it exhausting and uncomfortable. And now that I also have a baby to think about, I can't imagine entertaining a visitor for more than a few hours, let alone days. My father and I did have a fight about this, but I put my foot down and he booked the hotel. When he flew in, he visited us right away to meet my son. Throughout the holidays, things were a little tense between us, but otherwise fine. A few days after Christmas, we had a small discussion. I told my father that my husband and I are doing our research on a futon, but until then, the mattress on the floor is the best we can offer. I added that I was very upset about his initial reaction, and if he ever acts like this again, I won't host him at my place, futon or not. He can either book a hotel room or wait until my sister moves out of my mom's place. On Friday, after letting me know he'd gotten home safely, he apologized to me. I'm not sure how sincere it was, but I won't worry about that right now. He doesn't usually apologize. There was a lot of tension between us when I was younger because of that. The older I got, the more he started taking accountability. My husband and I do plan on having at least one more child, so we might convert the office space into a nursery in the future. There's also the possibility of moving to a bigger place, but either way, a guest bedroom will never be a priority. For now, I'm more than satisfied with our living situation. I'm also glad we were able to deal with this peacefully, and my son's first Christmas was perfect. Thanks, everyone. Happy 2025. Well, Opie, good for you. You stood on your principles and you talked to your dad. He apologized regardless of whether it was sincere or not. You are not going to change anything or inconvenience yourself or your family because he's upset about it. So here's wishing you the best to you and your family in the future, OP. Thanks so much for sharing, and happy 2025 to you too. And now, let's move on to the next post that also has an update. This post is from the subreddit, Am I the A-hole? And it's by user AwayJaguar2813. 13. Am I the a-hole for cutting off my parents because they plan on leaving almost everything to my disabled brother? My 24 female brother, 32 male, is a failure to launch. He's never been very smart. He did badly in school and never went to college. He tried 2 different trade schools, welding and mechanic, but he basically flunked out of both. He works at a gas station now. My brother and I are our parents' only children. They always treated us relatively equal until adulthood. They always insisted we earn our own way. They refused to pay for college or anything. I joined the military at 17, got an associate's degree while I was in, and my GI Bill went towards my bachelor's. I'm working towards my master's now. My husband and I have bought a house and have done well for ourselves. My parents, however, fully paid for my brother to try trade school twice. They've given him cash when he was behind on rent and countless loans. They support him cosplaying as an adult. Meanwhile, they never paid for my wedding education. Nothing. I don't really care so much that they didn't give me money, but the disparity in how they've treated me versus my brother. Our parents are in their 60s now, and while they aren't that old, they're both in bad health and probably won't live another 10 years. They just recently started working on their will and notified us that they were leaving almost everything to my brother, but they want me to be their medical power of attorney, manage their estate, etc. I told my parents to give my brother everything and that I'm completely done with them. They told me to have some grace and understand the fact that he isn't very capable and needs their support even after they're gone. My mother had a doctor's appointment this morning and asked me for a ride since she medically can't work. I told her to ask her favorite child or pay for an Uber. Things have been tense and hostile. My brother called me to apologize and asked me not to be mad at him, But I told him that I'm not mad at him. I'm mad at our parents for not treating us equally, and he didn't do anything wrong. Am I the note? I meant to put disabled in quotation marks. My mother refers to my brother as disabled even though he isn't. She's had him tested for every kind of learning disability there is. He just has a below-average IQ. She thinks that counts as a disability when it isn't. No. OP. I don't think you're the a-hole. I think you're right, and resentment can obviously arise when siblings aren't treated equally. In this case, your parents, sure, they want to take care of your brother and give him everything they've got while they give you every responsibility there is regarding them. I absolutely agree that it's not fair and that it's okay to be mad at them. But it's also a good thing that you're not mad at your brother as he hasn't done anything. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's check out the community comments. Salt Lavishness 7560 says, quote, "But they want me to be their medical power of attorney, manage their estate, etc." End quote. This is a huge ask. Even if you stood to inherit that, you're expected to do all the heavy lifting and then be your brother's keeper after they pass. It's a hell of a lot. Okay, Stable 7501 says, information needed. Why can't your brother live with them, help them, and take them to appointments? Seems like the least he can do. Can he drive? Is he disabled or just lazy? And Dopey responds, they don't want to ask him. He's forgetful and they probably won't be able to rely on him anyways. Lucky Lady says, if he is that unintelligent, he might need to be in a conservatorship or he will end up in trouble inheriting anything at all. Like you or appointed person control his finances and all. And Snowfleece says, sounds like he actually is functionally disabled. Not all disabilities are obvious. I have some siblings like this. Well, one actually has a genius IQ, but he's a savant and functionally useless. My parents want me to help manage things for them when they are gone. I don't want to. I don't care about the money, but I don't want to manage my siblings either. I was the scapegoat in the family of an abusive narcissist mother. There are different trusts your parents can set up and they can name a third-party professional trustee. If they do expect you to manage it and you even wanted to, then you would need to be compensated for that. But if you don't, then tell them to work out a trust and a plan with a lawyer and leave you out of it. Additional information from Ops comments. I joined the Army. A lot of the guys I worked with weren't too bright, but worked hard. You don't need to be brilliant to do well in most jobs in the Army. Maybe I could have chosen an easier degree, but I still think I would have been able to finish college. I think my brother could have done a lot more if he applied himself and worked harder. He's a slow learner, but if he tries enough times, he eventually gets things. Unfortunately, he has a habit of getting frustrated and giving up when he doesn't do well at things. Now, when they had us tested, my IQ was 131, I believe, and he was around 80. It's been so many years I'm having a hard time remembering. It definitely was above the cutoff for being considered intellectually disabled because I remember them being surprised that he scored above it. And I know you're all right. They don't owe me an inheritance, just like I don't owe them care in their old age. It's up to them to decide where their priorities sit. I originally was going to take care of them in their old age, but I now have decided they're going to a nursing home if it's up to me. I'm done. So nobody gave an outright judgment, but many referred to how unjust the parents' expectations were. Anyways, let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. Hey! So the consensus on my post was a bit of a mixed bag. I sat down with my parents and I wanted to give an update and answer some stuff. My brother is not actually disabled. He just has a low IQ, just over 80. You need an IQ under 70 where I live to be considered disabled and to qualify for any sort of benefits. My parents have babied him because from a young age, he wasn't as smart as other kids and had a low self-esteem because of that and was quick to give up on things when they seemed too hard. He does okay now. He works and pays his bills most of the time. He drives and lives with a roommate. On to the update. I sat down with my parents and explained that I've always felt like they treated me worse than my brother. They always emphasized to me that as an adult, you need to support yourself and figure things out on your own. I had to join the military at 17 because I knew they'd kick me out when I was 18. My parents never offered me any support outside of raising me as a child. They didn't buy my husband and I a wedding gift. They didn't offer much of anything. Meanwhile, they brag about having over $1 million in the bank and having succeeded from nothing. Additionally, they paid to put my brother through 2 trade schools that he failed out of, offered him money to start his own business. They've always bailed him out when he was short on rent. For me, it's not so much about money, but about the disparity in how we've been treated. It's obvious that they loved and cared for him more because they were willing to do these things for him and not me. But despite them not being there for me, I've still done really well in my life. I told my parents about all of this and they were interrupting me and talking over me the whole time. They told me I'm not entitled to a dime when they die and that I'm an adult and I can handle myself. They just weren't understanding or even caring about my points. They told me I need to step up and treat them better and that it's wrong of me to not take my sick mother to the doctor or take care of her because of money. Eventually, I just gave up on trying to talk about my feelings. They just don't care. I told them that they're adults and they're not entitled to anything from me. Just like how they were never required to help me, I'm not required to help them. I told them to completely remove me from their will. I'm not willing to be their estate executor, medical power of attorney, nothing. I don't want a dime from them at this point, and I suggested they spend all the money they've saved over the years to pay for really good nursing homes and an estate executor because I'm no longer willing to do anything for them. My mother was floored and asked if I'd really put my own parents in a nursing home, and I asked if they'd really let their 17-year-old daughter join the army to get harassed by older men in order to go to school without taking on a huge debt. My parents cried and yelled at me and I left, and that's that, I guess. I kind of feel relieved, like a massive weight is off my shoulders. I have a wonderful husband. We own a nice home. I'm getting ready to start working on my master's degree and we're thinking about maybe having a baby soon. I no longer have to worry about dealing with my parents. They're adults and they can deal with their own problems just like I've done with mine. And yeah, that's it. It is what it is. Well, OP, your parents clearly weren't paying attention to what you were trying to tell them. You were trying to explain that they have been unfair in the way they've treated both of their children, and all they heard was money this, money that, or you wanting money.